Hey y'all, Joshua Fields Milburn here from The Minimalist. Welcome back to Living Room Conversations. Today's question is from Horace. Horace asks, do you ever want to quit social media? Well, let me explain. Actually, you can probably tell I'm, again, today not in my living room. We're here at the Minimalist Podcast Studio. I think if I keep doing it in the podcast studio, we might have to call these studio conversations or something. But anyway, didn't get a chance to record one of these this morning, and I was hoping to have Ryan here for this because I think we both have slightly nuanced views on quitting social media or using social media, but we're definitely, if we're not on the same page, we're certainly on the same chapter, and our views continue to morph and change over time. I think first off, we have to define what does social media even mean, right? Like this video is on YouTube, for example, and you can, I don't know, is YouTube social media? I mean, you can comment below on the video, you can ask questions on the video, you can interact with other people on the video. Does that make it social media? When I think of social media, I tend to think of the big three, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. Twitter is my personal favorite. It's the one I tend to get the most value from. But maybe Google Plus is out there for some ungodly reason. I don't know why. A lot of people follow me on Google Plus. I used to be fairly active on it back in the day when it was at its apex, and I still use it occasionally to post different essays that we put out there. But that's really it. Although no, once a year, that's not true. Once a year, I put my top 10 albums of the year, top 12 albums, top 8 albums, whatever it is, of the year. I do that once a year. You can find that at theminimalists.com/sound, by the way. Just a list each year of what my favorite albums were for that year. And so I use Google Plus for that. Is that social media? It's not that social because not that many people are using it anymore. Is Tumblr social media? I don't know. I rarely use a service like Tumblr, although I rarely use Facebook, and it's the most popular social media app there is. Now, is Reddit a social media app? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, it's certainly social in the sense that people are communicating. Can you follow people? No, but I think you can follow threads on there. I don't really use Reddit very often. Occasionally I'll be directed there because someone sends me a link, but otherwise I don't go on Reddit and browse. I don't have a Reddit app. Is that social media? I don't know, but there are plenty of platforms I don't use at all, or that have gone out of business or have become irrelevant. I think of MySpace at one point. In fact, here's a funny story for you. I was really late to using social media. 2009, I didn't have any social media platforms, and right after my mother died and my marriage ended, I was just sort of looking for some sort of answers, and I was led to social media. I signed up for Twitter and Facebook and MySpace all on the same day. In 2009, it was the very end of MySpace. Bands were still using it to communicate with people, but that was about it. Facebook, I never really used regularly. I mean, I have a Facebook account, and I have some friends on there who occasionally message me, and I'll figure out once a month that I have some messages and respond to people. It's just not something I'm drawn to personally. I understand other people are. I'm more often drawn to YouTube. But I don't use it as a social media app. I use it essentially as television, and I'll schedule an hour once or twice a week to binge watch some videos on YouTube, and so I don't feel bad about it. I don't just go on there passively and constantly watch. It's easy to fall down that rabbit hole. And so, Horace, your question about do you ever want to quit social media, I think quite often I want to quit distractions in my life. I want to eliminate distractions so that I have something meaningful to focus on. In fact, I think that is the key to eliminating distractions. The social media is only one distraction. Now, it's a very good distraction, meaning there are plenty of engineers and demographers and advertising executives and probably psychologists working at a lot of these companies who are trying very hard to retain our attention for as long as possible. And it's somewhat content ambivalent in that respect. You go to YouTube, you could find endless videos of cats with millions of views, or you could find a really informative lecture from a professor at Yale, and YouTube is agnostic as to whether or not they want you watching, right? And so if you spend an hour on one video or an hour on cat videos, they don't really care, right? And so I think it's up to us to use these platforms more responsibly. And that's what, in fact, we started doing this year. We put together this whole plan. In fact, let me pull it up here on my computer. And I can just read a little bit through it. There is this essay on our website, theminimalists.com/SM, which stands for social media. And the title of this blog post was How the Minimalists Are Using Social Media in 2018. And the essay starts with a question. Have you ever quit social media for an extended period of time? How did it change your perspective? And so I go on to write about this a little bit. After using social media almost every day for the last 7 years, the minimalists, me and Ryan, we decided to walk away for a month to see what would happen. So I wrote this at the beginning of February of this year. So on December 31st, 2017, before the ball dropped, we deleted all of our past tweets and Instagram photos. We ceased our Facebook and Pinterest activity. That's another one for you, Pinterest, right? And we uploaded a cryptic video alluding to our disappearance. That one was a lot of fun to make. Our friend Matt Diavella helped us make this video of us walking away from social media, although it was fairly cryptic. It just went to static. But we had a lot of fun with that. You can check that out. I'll try to put a link to anything I mentioned today in the video description below. And then we were gone. And now, a month later, so this is the beginning of February, we're still alive, and we're entering February 2018 with a blank slate. During our month away, we learned some important lessons, and we unlearned a few bad habits. Most important, we discovered a need for us to use social media differently going forward. And I think that's the key, is maybe quitting social media is applicable to you. In fact, I know recently, Nicodemus, he completely unfollowed everyone on social media. And that's not because he disliked those people, but he felt compelled too often to constantly scroll through the apps or whatever. Now, personally, I don't have any social media apps on my phone. No Twitter, no Instagram, no Facebook, no MySpace, no Reddit, anything like that on my phone. And that's because it's not because I think the platforms are problematic. I think I'm the problem. And so maybe the problem is more about us. And so one way to deal with that is, if we want to remove all the temptation, all the distraction whatsoever, then deleting the apps makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? But maybe it also means that we can come back and use something differently in a more deliberate way. I know when I got rid of my cell phone for 2 months, I did this experiment, and I learned a bunch of lessons from it. And I learned that I was actually depriving myself, and minimalism is not about deprivation, it's about the intentional use of the items that we do have. And so we went back to social media after taking a month off, after taking January off, and decided to use it more deliberately. So here are a few of the lessons that we learned from quitting social media. The purpose. For us, once we created a blank slate, the purpose of social media became evident: communication. Not to sound overly simplistic, but we want to use these platforms to effectively communicate our thoughts, ideas, and creations, and engage our audience directly with questions and answers, not broadcast our every single thought. Social media can be a noisy place, and we don't want to add to the noise. We want to whisper to the people who are listening. And I think that's important, the whispering, or really the engagement with the people who are listening. I'm not using social media as a platform to argue. It is my hope to help people, to provide solutions to people who are looking for them, not to get on here and use it as a platform to argue. There are some people who do that really well. I think of the comedian Chris D'Elia. He's hilarious, especially when he gets into arguments with fans and critics and haters, trolls online. David Simon, the creator of the TV show The Wire, he does a phenomenal job just roasting people on Twitter. And that's not why I use it. I want to use it to help people, to engage with people who might need the help. It's a broadcast channel, the same way I might go onto the Today Show and talk about something, or go on NPR and talk about something. I want to do the same thing with social media. Talk about something, communicate with people who have eagerly given me permission to communicate to them, right? By following, by subscribing, whatever. If you want to follow along, you can do that. Now, if you are just a critic and you want to show up and criticize, you want to be that seagull who swoops in, flies over, shits on everything, and flies away, I don't have any tolerance, any patience for that, because it's not what I'm trying to accomplish here. And so I just quickly delete or block that person. I mean, I will very aggressively block people, liberally I should say, block people, just because that's not part of it. If people are coming to the table with just problems without a solution, feedback is when you provide a useful solution for something. Criticism was when you just highlight the flaws or the problem, or sometimes you might provide a faux solution to something, a fake solution. That's not real feedback. That's not useful. And so if it's not useful, the way that I tend to think about social media in that respect, and I was talking to my partner Bex about this morning. If someone were to be in my house, and so if we're in my house, I welcome you into my home, and you made some flippant comment that you would have made on YouTube, I'd probably ask you to leave. And so if I wouldn't keep you in my house, I'm not gonna keep you on my channel or my account or whatever it may be. I would rather spend that time focusing on creating and not engaging with the seagulls. The next lesson that we learned here, mindfulness. Whenever an activity occupies much of our mind, we need to take a step back and assess whether it's worth the time we spend on that activity. Our friend Jessica Lynn Williams, who helps us organize our social media feeds, discovered an important insight without the pall of social media in her everyday life. This is what she said. Stepping away from social media in January gave me the clarity of mind to see the, quote, asshole in my mind running amok, as Dan Harris says. It's something Dan Harris talks about with meditation. He's found the asshole in his mind running amok quite often. And I think that's true when you step away from social media for a bit. Step away, not just from social media though, but you step away from the distractions, right? I did this recently with podcasting as well. I discovered that podcasting was a bit of a distraction for me. I get immense value from certain podcasts, but I was subscribed to way too many. So I went in and probably got rid of 80%, maybe more, of those podcasts. In fact, I deleted them all and then added the podcast back in that I found the most value in. To resubscribe to those, the ones that were at the top of mind, that came to my mind right away. I think that could be useful in our everyday lives with social media or with any other activity that we can find to be distracting. Sometimes we get caught up on this path where we just keep going and going and going down that path, and we're not really sure why we're doing it anymore. It worked once upon a time, but that doesn't mean it works anymore. And so mindfulness is one thing that we took away from that. Augmentation is something else. We want to use social media to augment our creations, blog, podcast, books, films, not as the main platform on which we create. So we want to be, these should augment the main creations, right? This little video experiment I'm doing this month is an augmentation to what we typically do. Although because we're getting ready to do a lot more filmmaking, video work, we're hiring a filmmaker. Most of you probably saw that on our website. We're hiring a filmmaker next month. In fact, there are applications for, I think, 2 more days. People can still apply on our website. But we've gotten like 50 submissions. I think we're going to have like a final 16, and then we'll figure out where do we go from there. But I'm really excited to do more video work for people, but not just to produce content. I think content generation is the problem with social media quite often. What I'm more excited about is producing meaningful creations, things that will help people, that will solve problems, things that I find meaningful, things that I wished I had an answer to back when I was first discovering simplifying my life, or using it as a platform to work out what I'm figuring out right now and help people who are in a similar situation as I might be as I continue to solve my problems. My life is not without problem. As you know, if you listen to the health podcast I did recently, it was called Health Problems, episode 138. Man, I've gone through a lot of health problems over the last couple of years, and I finally got to a point where I felt comfortable with sharing a lot of those problems that I had, and because I had some solutions, and I thought that would be helpful. Instead of me just getting on here and maundering on, pontificating about my problems, I didn't think that would be helpful, but eventually finding some solutions that might be helpful for people and sharing those, that was really helpful. We did a video version of that podcast too, if you want to check it out on YouTube. So we think social media should augment our lives. And it goes on to explain more about augmentation. Unfollowing was a big part of this essay. And then I talked about a lot of the unlearned bad habits. So I had to unlearn some bad habits. Dealing with idiots was one of them on social media, letting them take up all of my mind share, the sort of psychological damage of that. And I don't respond to criticism anymore at all. And that's because I actively seek out feedback from people I trust. I ask the people who are closest to me who have radically different points of view, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Challenge me on this. Help me steelman my argument, my writing, my podcast. Let's have a good in-depth conversation about this with massive amounts of people from different points of view so we can have these conversations even though we disagree, but these are people I trust. And then I don't have to lean on criticism from people I don't know. I talk about pacifiers in here, removing social media apps from my phone, removing the pacifiers, becoming not a vehicle for constant promotion, using social media to promote. I want to use social media as a video or a vehicle to add value to other people's lives, not as a vehicle just to promote the things I'm working on. Occasionally I'll talk about something I'm working on, like for example, tomorrow is my birthday. I'll be 37 years old, and on our website you'll see we're actually going to be asking folks to donate $37 for my birthday we're trying to build a grocery store in Dayton, Ohio, which has one of the largest food deserts in the country. Second hungriest city for families with children is my hometown, Dayton, Ohio. Spent the first 31 years of my life there, and definitely want to give back. So Ryan and I tend to focus on 1 or 2 philanthropic projects a year, and we'll use social media to talk about that, to promote that. But I won't beat people over the head with it. I will present it to them in a way and say, hey, here's an option. Instead of, if you want to do something for my birthday, instead of getting me cufflinks, you can just go to theminimalists.com/Dayton and you can donate $37 or whatever amount you can afford to help us raise enough money to build a grocery store to provide nutrition in one of the largest food deserts in the country. That's how we'll use social media, but I'm not going to beat you over the head with it every single day. We'll use it to talk about that. So promoting a lot less, but finding ways to add value to via these different vehicles. And the last bad habit that we had to unlearn was something I called triplicate. It was weird before this year we were using social media, especially the big 3, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, as like, well, I will post a photo on Twitter and then I'll repost it on Instagram and I'll repost it on Facebook with similar sort of descriptions. And it was like those old carbon copy forms that you would fill out. It would be available in triplicate, and I felt like that's what they used to call the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. Instead, we looked at, and that's what the rest of this essay is about. I'll put a link to it in the video description so you can read it. But we figured out how to use each platform differently. So we're using YouTube for videos. If you want to see a video of us, you'll go to YouTube for that. If you just want to get good, concise text, meaningful text snippets and quotes from the minimalists, then you go to Twitter and you can see just text. We won't use any links on Twitter. Or Facebook is a great place to post links. People get immense value from the articles that we share from other sources, and occasionally our website as well, but mainly from other articles that we're out there reading. And thanks to Jessica for helping out with curating a lot of those articles that have to do with simple living or intentional living, and sharing those articles with other people to help educate people. Or with Instagram, sharing beautiful photos, and we use black and white photos only now on Instagram because the color is in the words that we post. And then we use Instagram stories a little bit differently as the sort of ephemeral sharing. So if we have something that's going on today, or this quick ephemeral burst that is only going to be out in the ether for 24 hours, then it disappears altogether. I love that. Now there are plenty of other platforms we don't really use. What are the other ones out there? Snapchat, although I'm sure it's great for some people. And so the question is, like, what's appropriate for us to use, and what's appropriate right now might change over time. And yes, there may be a time where I want to quit altogether, but I found right now it's a net positive for me because it allows me to communicate with people in an authentic way, as long as I'm following the sort of boundaries, this plan that I put out. Using it more intentionally was the key. All right, y'all, that's it for today's living room conversation. You can join me tomorrow on my birthday for another conversation. We're getting close to the end of the month here. If you have a question, or maybe actually, let me know how you're using social media right now. Maybe you're not using it that often, or maybe you're using it in a different way from how I am, and I could definitely learn some lessons from you, provide some solutions. I'm always eager to learn. You can comment below about that. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Also, I'd love to hear your questions. I'll be answering more of these. I know we're coming to the end of the month, but we're going to keep going beyond that, probably not every single day past June, but I like to make this a regular installment, having these living room conversations, and especially in the future as we bring different people onto the podcast and stuff. Maybe we step aside after when we do a brief living room conversation with them, a 3 to 5 minute thing where we just answer a quick question. I know I went off the rails a bit today, but if you like these answers, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel. Otherwise, I will see you tomorrow. Have fun, y'all.